Homeland Security wants your DNA. Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C., as well as Chicago, Illinois. In today's video, we're going to talk about a proposed rule from the Department of Homeland Security that would greatly expand the use of biometrics and the types of evidence that they gather for anyone touching an immigration case. This expanded rule is breathtaking in scope. They want your DNA, they want your iris scans, they want your fingerprints, they want everything about you. If you're applying for an immigration benefit, if you're sponsoring someone for an immigration benefit, if you're going through removal, even for children. This is one of the most sweeping biometric expansions that we've ever seen, and the scope of it is mind-boggling. They want everyone's identity information, and they want to store it all in a database that's there for them to use for whatever purpose they decide. Let's walk through the new rule and see what it means to you. Right now, most immigrants know that if you apply for an immigration benefit, you're going to have to get your biometrics done. Biometrics basically consists of two things. One, getting your picture taken, and two, getting your fingerprints taken. Of course, the Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, they do a background check on anyone applying for an immigration benefit, and they do that by using your fingerprints. Makes total sense. Seems like an appropriate investigation is in order when someone's applying for their next immigration benefit. Not very controversial to check someone's fingerprints. No one is upset about that. But this new rule proposed on November 3rd, 2025 would greatly expand what the Department of Homeland Security obtains about you and your beneficiary and anyone else going through the immigration process. In fact, it's a revival of a late rule from the prior Trump administration that they put in place in 2020 where they wanted to expand biometrics. Now that they have 4 more years of Donald Trump in office, they want to bring the rule back. The Department of Homeland Security says expanded biometrics are necessary in order to combat fraud and to do proper investigations and to keep everybody safe. Of course, there's positively no evidence that the prior system wasn't working, but ICE and Homeland Security, they want that data. They want to gather all they can about you, and they want to store it in their government database. Under this new proposed rule, if it goes into effect in January of 2026, anyone going through the immigration process, whether they are the beneficiary or the sponsor, if they're the U.S. citizen or the foreign immigrant, anybody would have to give up this expanded set of data about themselves, their DNA, their iris scan, which is an eye scan, their fingerprints, and they want to store all of this in a government database. This would be true for any applicant regardless of age, so old people, even children, would have their DNA stored by the federal government. The rule also redefines biometrics, so no longer is it just fingerprints. It would include facial imagery for facial recognition, fingerprints and palm prints, iris scans, voice prints, and the big one, DNA. The Department of Homeland Security would then use this data for continuous vetting. In other words, for them to be able to spy on you and to keep track of you and to know where you are at all times. So let's say somebody becomes a green card holder. The Department of Homeland Security could use this data all the time that the person is here as a lawful permanent resident, up to and including when they're a citizen. And of course, what's going to stop them from using it once the person becomes a U.S. citizen? Not this Supreme Court. Several groups will feel the pinch of this new rule immediately. VAWA self-petitioners and T-visa, those being trafficked, will have to submit biometrics instead of just getting a good moral character letter from the police department. U.S. citizens will now be subjected to having their biometrics captured, including their DNA, their palm prints, their face prints, all that stuff now is going to be required of U.S. citizens. And the rule promises greater vetting for those wanting to sponsor their spouses or children under the Adam Walsh Act or under the law protecting people who are sponsoring someone for a fiancé visa. Children and infants could also be subjected to DNA scans, and the government says that would be to prevent human trafficking and kidnapping. Homeland Security says it needs a person-centric database in order to properly dole out government benefits. They say they need this data to better manage identities, to detect fraud, to solve problems with duplicate entries in the government databases, and to make sure that everybody is who they say they are. They say these changes will improve security, prevent imposters, and make background checks faster and more reliable. Of course, why anyone would believe anything this Department of Homeland Security says? They've been lying through their teeth since they came into office on January 20th. They lie about ICE officers being assaulted. They lie about who they're trying to deport. They even lie to federal judges. So why anyone would take them at face value and say, oh yeah, we trust you, Department of Homeland Security, with this data. We trust you to use this judiciously. We trust you not to abuse this. Are you kidding me? Kristi Noem and Donald Trump, Stephen Miller? Are you kidding? No way. There are serious civil liberties and personal privacy concerns with this new proposed rule change. Of course, DNA collection goes beyond traditional vetting. They want to have a database of immigrants so that they can keep track of them at all times. Even though DHS says that it won't store DNA profiles, they will keep partial profiles and test results, and they will share that data across all government agencies. There's also the continuous vetting problem. So they say they want to have this biometrics data so that they can keep track of immigrants to see if they continue to follow the law, and if they don't, that they grab them as quickly as possible. This means that the database could poop out information about a particular immigrant completely wrong and end up putting someone into deportation or in harm's way. And not to be outdone, DHS also wants to make it harder for people who miss their biometrics appointments. The standard right now is, did you have good cause for missing your biometrics? They want to make it extraordinary circumstances. Remember, they want to deny more immigration benefits. That's what all of this is about, is denying legal immigration to the United States to slow that down, to stop it if they can. And they figure that if people miss their biometrics notice and they make it harder for that to get excused, then they can deny more cases, which is what they're all about. DHS estimates that this new biometrics capture will cost somewhere around $285 to $300 million. That over 1 million more people will get their biometrics taken. And of course, all of this will be done by government contractors who probably happen to just be donors to the Republican Party. Does that sound right? The alleged legal basis for this are a pair of executive orders signed by President Trump trying to undo protections against this kind of data gathering that were put in place during the Biden administration. The government claims that the Immigration and Nationality Act would allow them to do this. We'll see, as I'm sure this is all going to be challenged in federal court. This new proposed rule is clearly overbroad. It's not narrowly defined. It puts personal privacy on the back burner, and it puts all of us subject to greater government surveillance. So you can be damn sure that legal advocates will challenge this rule, and we'll see what happens. Of course, the Trump Supreme Court lets him do whatever he wants, so it's a scary, scary time for those concerned with civil liberties and personal privacy. The rule is probably contrary as well to the Administrative Procedures Act. We don't know if just by a proposed rule they can make these changes. We'll see if the law allows it. We'll see when it's challenged in court. But of course, the biggest issue is the genetic surveillance of U.S. citizens and future U.S. citizens. This is a very big problem. So you may be asking yourself, what can I do about this, Jim? Well, you can contact your members of Congress. Of course, they're sitting on their butts with the government shutdown, but when they come back into office, you should raise holy hell about this. You should write letters to the editor. You can file public comments. The rule is not going to go into effect until January, so the agency has to take public comments. You can find that by looking for proposed rule 2025 for this year, -0205. That's the rule number. And you can leave comments on the government website. Even short comments help. I know it doesn't sound like much, but leaving a comment, voicing your displeasure at this new expanded surveillance of U.S. citizens and immigrants, it's a scary, scary time, and we need to stand up and speak out against this gross overstepping of government power. I seem to remember when Republicans were very, very concerned about government overstep and them diving deep into the lives of everyday Americans. This is here. This is Big Brother. This is the government surveilling you. This is the government keeping track of your palm prints, your fingerprints, your eye scans, and your DNA. It's scary stuff, and they're laying the groundwork for Trump's police force to keep all of us under the thumb for years to come. So as things stand now, biometrics just involves fingerprints. They want to expand it to DNA, and I think that's scary. The technology is very powerful, and what that means is the chances for abuse and misuse are greater and greater than ever before. Please stay tuned to this channel. We'll keep an eye on this proposed bill. We'll update you as the changes make their way through the system. and we will keep you advised as to any other rule changes when it comes to biometrics or the immigration process itself. If you found it helpful, please be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications. If you're looking for help with your immigration case and you would like to work with our firm, give us a call at 314-961-8200 or email us info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. Please be sure to join us in our Facebook group. It's the Immigrant Home. It's a free Facebook group. You can go in there and talk about this issue or any other immigration issue whenever you want. We have thousands and thousands of immigrants in that group. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, Immigration Answer Show, and whenever we go live, you will get an alert. And we do a live call-in show where you can ask me questions for free for an hour and a half, 3 or 4 times a week. We'd love to have you join us there. And then finally, if you're not following us on TikTok, you should, @Immigration Hacking. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next video.